Again, welcome to Access for Disabilities Policy Webinar Series. My name is Randy Turner. I am with the Governor's Commission for Peoples with Disabilities, and here today we have Howard Rosenblum from the National Association of the Deaf. And also we have several board members from the Texas Association of the Deaf. I'm going to turn it over to Howard. Thank you for joining us, Howard. Hello, everyone. Hold on just a moment. Hello, I'm from the National Association of the Deaf, as you can see on the PowerPoint here. We were established in 1880. I've only been working there for 11 years, not 140 years. I am the Chief Executive Officer for the National Association for the Deaf. My full name is Howard Rosenblum. And I'm the CEO as well as the Director of Legal Perspectives. And we will be discussing that today, of legal procedures, and we'll be discussing that today. I'm going to give you a moment to look at the box so that everybody can get a chance to have full information, and I will go ahead and sign it. Our programs include membership, which includes both, that is on the state, on the individual and organizational level. And we also include associations such as Texas Association of the Deaf and affiliates. For an example, the National Black Association for the Deaf, or the National Black Deaf Advocates, the National Hispanic and Latino Association of the Deaf, I think it's NHLAD, Asian deaf communities, Indigenous deaf communities, deaf and blind, Americans with deaf who are deaf and blind, Senior Citizens of America, Deaf Women's Advocacy Group. There's a number of other affiliates that we work with, as well as associations from all 50 states, except for Wyoming, almost all 50 states. We're still waiting on Wyoming. The services that we provide include youth programs. We're involved with YLC, which is a youth leadership camp. I think currently we just celebrated 50 years, I believe 3 years ago. So that means we've been at this with that for 53 years. Many deaf adults learned their leadership skills from YLC. We also have Junior NAD, which is for deaf schools all across the nation, to have where we instruct high school students how to function as how to function as though they're how to function in the high schools as an association for the deaf. So we teach them budgeting skills and how to run an association as though they were an adult group. COBO, which is the College Bowl, means individual universities who have deaf and hard of hearing students across the nation will compete during the NAD conference on a variety of skills. It could be art history knowledge, mathematic knowledge, deaf history, culture, current events. So people are instructed to answer questions related to these topics. We also just, I think it was 3 weeks ago, Gallaudet, we just had Kobo 3 weeks ago, and Gallaudet won this year. We also have a program called Pitch, which is a competition that happens during the conference as well. We have a variety of youth age 18 to 30, where we have them pitch ideas on how to improve everyday life for the deaf community. This includes business opportunities, change in strategies, we have asked them to pitch ideas, and then we judge them and choose a winner. So that's what we do with the youth. We also have programs relating to communication and social media and advocacy and getting information out about NAD, searching for good resources throughout the community. We push that information out to the community. So we have this through website, through research, through Facebook, through Instagram, and also through magazines. The team that's involved with the communications and social media has been working hard to share this information. We also provide policy advocacy when it comes to educational advocacy, technology, as well as others. Our legal team is involved with policy writing, yes, but we also are involved with, we also have a litigation team, which goes to court in order to access change, to work on change. I'm going to start discussing the policy and what our policy looks like. We do have a person who focuses completely on education policy, and they work to change the federal government when it comes to special education law, dealing with deaf and hard of hearing. This person spans K through 12 as well as post-secondary education and ECI, early childhood intervention. It's possible that parents have a deaf child and they're not sure what to do. So we are there to provide exposure to the deaf community, exposure to language, and provide resources. K through 12, there's many schools who don't have a concept of how to serve the deaf population in their schools. Typically, there are deaf programs in schools, they understand what's going on, or the deaf schools know what's happening. But in mainstream schools, they are often unaware of what services they need to provide. They are not aware of how to find a good interpreter to provide skills. There's a lot of issues that come up for deaf children across the United States when you're talking about mainstream. We also work with state legislation in order to improve the education for deaf children across different states. The state legislative efforts that we provide means that we have a person who is charged with working with a commission to monitor state laws, to push for new state laws that benefit us, and to oppose old or new state laws that hurt our community. This really means that, we have one person who pays attention to the federal laws and one person who looks at the state laws.
50 states every day have some sort of issues popping up at their legislatures that are deliberating on laws or contemplating how to make some changes to their current law. And sometimes the state associations don't know quite how to monitor those deliberations. So they have a person that will monitor all of the 50 states legislatures and all of the issues that arise. And once they see a problem or an issue that comes up that's relevant, they will do a check-in with the state associations and make them savvy to it. Or for those that don't know, they will inform and act as a liaison to provide some of the support on whether or not that law is good, and or if there should be some contingent that goes and lobbies at that state association in order to pass the law. If the law needs some modification, they will also go and propose some of those modifications to enhance the law on our behalf. Or if that law is entirely bad on its face, they will also go and attempt to kill the bill immediately. And that's part of our work in monitoring all of these state associations. There are federal laws that we adhere to, but each state also have their own individual laws. Now, some of you have questions. Please do deposit those into the Q&A box or into the chat, and then we will answer those at the end of the presentation this morning. Another part of policy work takes place at the federal level. Now, a big part of what we do focuses specifically on technology and telecommunications, such as VRS, captioning, captioning related to telephones. That's not the only thing that we do. We do have a particular focus on healthcare. We have focuses on employment. We have work on housing. But primarily what we have focused on is the technology / telephone communication wing. Now, first off, I would like to describe the several avenues we have. The first is legislative, the second is policy, partnerships with different corporations, and we will go into each of those. Now, as far as the law goes, there is already some legislation with different associations, such as the Federal Communications Commission, which is abbreviated FCC, and they have responsibility over radio, television, and phone. And it's still quite unsure how they are going to negotiate that, but then do they also have control over the internet? That's also another issue that we are working with. Now, up to this point, we've had responsibility for all TV captioning on television. The FCC has been in charge of all of that. However, now with the advent and proliferation of internet news and internet access, they show a lot of what happens on the television with captions on the internet, but without captions up until about 2010. So NAD, prior to my coming in as CEO, NAD was working with the blind community and other disabled groups as well to try to propose something to Congress, trying to pass a new law called CVAA. And what CVAA stands for is Communication and Video Accessibility Act. CVAA requires and gives the authority to the FCC that any show, any movie, anything on television that is reshown on the internet must provide the same captions that were on the television. If they fail to do so, they are penalized. That law greatly changed the landscape and improved the lives of disabled people. Now, CVAA has not yet resolved all internet captioning issues. The first time they show a movie on the internet that was not on the television first, but that was shown on the internet first, was not under the CVAA provision to provide captioning. So we had to come up with another solution in order to resolve that, which I will be discussing next. However, the FCC oftentimes passes a law such as CVAA, but then they come to the issue of how to change the rules, change the policies, in order to follow the law. And so oftentimes we have to be the person that's reminding them, speaking on behalf of the deaf and hard of hearing community and all other groups of deaf organizations as well. All of us work together to approach the FCC. One good example just happened recently. The new phone numbers that went out. If you remember 911, which is what one would call for an emergency, now we have 988. 988 is the number that one would call if they're feeling any sort of depression, suicidal ideations. If any sort of mental health emergency comes up, you would call 988 in order to save your life. That 988 number was set up by the FCC. Prior to that, you had to dial in a full 10 numbers, which wasn't easy for people who were already in some sort of emotional emergency state. So the FCC made 988 to make it more efficient and easier. So they had the text to 988 number, which they realized needed to be made ready, but they said, no, we were not going to tackle that issue now, we'll figure that out later. And then the second issue they wanted was an ASL option, where if a deaf person dialed 988 on their video phone through relay, it would put them through an interpreter, where we realized that wasn't efficient. It would probably be best to have them go directly to an ASL user, especially, like I said, when they're in a mental health emergency. So the FCC said, we will tackle those two issues later, at a later date, regardless of all of the petitions and all of the proposals that were being raised to them by different disability groups. So they finally accepted the text to 988 number simultaneously as a voice call. That happened just this month of July. And then the text, the second option for ASL would be starting immediately also. They said that the ASL option was going to be made available later, so we're still working on that. However, the text to 988 has become available this month. And so instead of a lawsuit or any sort of policy changes, we have worked directly with corporations to try to figure out how to enhance things without any sort of government interference, without any sort of legislation, just working directly with them, because sometimes that ends up working better. An example of this would be many years ago, in about 2011, when I had just started at NAD, Uber and Lyft, the two rideshare services, both reached out to NAD at the same time. And they said to us, this is something very interesting because in our roster of drivers, those who are driving for us, for Uber and Lyft, many of them are deaf. And they join us as drivers, but then we're noticing a high rate of attrition, and we're trying to figure out why that is. So they wanted to partner with NAD to try to figure out why this was happening with their deaf drivers. When Uber and Lyft first started, the problem was that they had a telephone app for anyone who wanted to book a ride. And then they had a different app for the drivers, a different interface that the Uber and Lyft drivers would see from those that wanted to book the ride. But the problem was that once you were in the car, you'd have to oftentimes have, well, really two issues would come up. First, you'd have your person in the back, your passenger that you were driving, you would drop them off, click that you finished the ride on the app, wait for your next ride to come in as you circled around town, and they would miss all of the notifications for a new ride because the interface was speaking. There was like a Siri-like voice coming out speaking that you have a new ride. Would you like to accept it or decline it? So these deaf drivers would completely miss that notification, obviously, because they couldn't hear it. And so I worked with Uber and Lyft, NAD worked with them to solve this problem because they were both having the same issue. So we developed something that would flash that was more visually user-friendly for deaf drivers. So once a notification came in, they'd be able to click on their screen, yes, I'd like to accept the ride, and they would get more work rather than miss all of the fares. That was one issue. The concurrent issue that was coming up was once they accepted a ride, they would then have to look for this person to get into the ride. And oftentimes, you know what it's like trying to drive around traffic, finding where your passenger is. They would miss each other often. So the hearing person would stand outside waiting for an Uber or for the Lyft. They would just make a phone call right on the app. It was built in to be able to call the driver. Deaf people obviously didn't have that convenience. So once a call was made to them, they would miss it, or the call wouldn't come through at all. So then they would just cancel the ride because they couldn't find their driver, and then they had to go look for another passenger. So deaf people were again missing out on an opportunity that was not fair to them. So Uber and Lyft made those changes where it was no longer a call, but a text within the app to those deaf drivers only. And that greatly improved the service. It wasn't perfect, but it improved it a lot from where it was. And now there are tons of drivers for Uber and Lyft. So that's an example of one of the partnerships that NAD was involved in. Another partnership that we did a lot of work with was with YouTube, also Instagram, and also TikTok. And we partnered with them in order to add an automatic captioning feature for any and all of the posts that went onto their platform. In times past, it was almost all videos had nothing, and then occasionally you would find one that did. But anytime there was a post made by anyone on any of those platforms, we wanted to have captions made readily available. Before it was up to the individual, it wasn't a corporate standard. So once they partnered with us, the requirement was immediately when you posted a video, it would come with captioning. If you wanted to turn the captioning off, that would be on the person that had to go into the settings and try to figure out how, but they would default to being on, where in the past it was the opposite. If you wanted the captions on, you had to try to maneuver all of the settings yourself and go through that inconvenience, whereas now they default to being on automatically. So all of the social media sites we beseeched and tried to get on board with making their default setting to have captions on rather than off. So that was something that NAD did in our work as well. New slide. So with all of those policies that were taking place, there were also a great deal of rules and policies and laws already out there, and many of these organizations still were not adhering to them. So that's why we had done my favorite thing, which was suing all of these places, lawsuits, 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 and forcing these places, unfortunately, to recognize the rights that they were supposed to be following. ASL was one of the areas that a lot of lawsuits have taken place regarding in hospitals, because so many hospitals were only willing to provide VRI for their deaf patients. Why not in-person live interpreters? I mean, when a deaf person's sick, the last thing I want to do is be lying down and trying to see an interpreter on a screen. But if you had a deaf person that was sick or was in the hospital for maybe an eye problem or some reason where they couldn't focus, it would be so much better to have a live in-person interpreter. And the challenge now is that many interpreters after COVID prefer to be remote, prefer to work from home or a VRS call center. And the amount of in-person work has greatly reduced. So that's the issue that we're facing now with COVID. And not NAD, but Disability Rights New York. And again, each state does have their own sort of chapter of disability rights. So we have DRT, Disability Rights Texas, that we're all familiar with. So each state has a similar chapter. So Disability Rights New York actually sued Governor Cuomo because he had refused to provide ASL interpreters during his COVID press briefings. There was never an interpreter present, only captions. And they said that captions were sufficient. They were sued and they lost. The Disability Rights New York won that lawsuit. And then all other 50 states followed suit when they saw that that lawsuit had taken place. So they ensured that there were interpreters at these briefings. That was in 2020, during the beginning of COVID. The White House didn't have an interpreter at the time either. And we were contacting them and we heard nothing. It was radio silence from the White House. So we decided to sue them as well.
So we did sue the White House. And we were unsure of any other prior suits to the White House. So we sued them and we won. The administration decided to provide ASL interpreters every day for all briefings, not just for COVID briefings, but for every briefing available, they had ASL interpreters ready. If there was somebody who was speaking, there was an interpreter. But this was only provided through the internet. So the ADA does not require this to be provided on TV. It's required to provide interpreters and language access, but not necessarily which medium. So of the 50 states, they all are providing interpreters, but in New York, we had, so the suit against New York did proliferate down to the rest of the states in order to provide interpreters. The one outlier was Florida. Governor DeSantis, he provided an interpreter maybe about a quarter or maybe 20% of the time. And we found out that from Governor Campbell in Tallahassee, or the sign is Tallahassee, sorry. So from Tallahassee, they had interpreters available in Tallahassee, but at other cities, if they went to Orlando or Miami, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, when Governor DeSantis traveled to other cities, there was not an interpreter provided. And we had to convince them that it was, or we asked that an interpreter was provided and he refused. So NAD sued Florida and sued Governor DeSantis. And we are still in the process of that suit. We also noticed that we're still having an issue when it comes to TV access. And this goes back to policy and needing to pass a new law, which requires that ASL is provided on TV when you have the governor or anybody who is any kind of large television provision needs to have an interpreter access. It needs to be showed, and it should be required by law to show the interpreter on TV. A different kind of lawsuit that we've been involved with is regarding captioning access. There are different systems. You know, the TV is pretty well captioned, internet, not so much. And in real life, of course, we don't see captioning out and about. The Washington Redskins, who have now changed to the Washington Commanders, previously in 2006, NAD sued the team because there were no captions in the stadium and deaf people were missing out on announcements, etc. So we sued and won and required that they must have captions from beginning to end on screen throughout the whole game, not just the occasional caption, but anything. If there's a song, if there's an announcement, every spoken word must be captioned. After we won against Washington Redskins, we then sued college football, the Ohio State University, in order to provide captioning in college sports. In sports, we wanted to see everything. We want to see baseball, football, basketball, you name it, soccer. They should provide captioning, and they do from then on out. Also, if you remember when NDCO was new, people were coming to us constantly because of Netflix. And the reason being, I'm not sure if you remember, but back when Netflix was first launched, it used to be that they would send out the DVD. A physical DVD was sent to your home. And you'd receive this DVD, you'd watch the movie, and then you'd send it back and they would send you a new one to watch. And this, I'm not sure if you remember that, but they came in these little red envelopes. Most of the DVDs had captioning built in. There was no law that was required for it. I think maybe only about 10% didn't have captioning, but 90% did. But when they decided to move their model down over to streaming platform only, that's when the issue showed up. The problem was the opposite percentage. 90% of streaming was not captioned. So we contacted Netflix and we said, hey, we need you to add captions. And they said no. They said, first of all, we don't have to. There's no law that requires it. And secondly, the technology means it's impossible. When it comes to a DVD is they could provide analog captioning. But with the new streaming services, that is digital, which is different. Hold on just a moment. Hold on. I was just making sure that there was no audio happening on my phone. Okay. Anyways, so we were working with Netflix and they gave us these two reasons that they wouldn't provide captioning, the law as well as the digital versus analog formatting. The second issue, when it comes to the digital captioning, we kept saying, yes, this is possible. And they kept saying no, and then defaulting back to the law. And we reminded them that the Americans with Disabilities Act did require captioning, and Netflix insisted that it did not apply to anything on the internet. This is where CVAA comes in. If you remember me discussing it, CVAA talks about television, but CVAA does not apply to what's happening on the internet, but the Americans with Disabilities Act does. So we decided to sue Netflix and we won in order to get access to streaming platforms via the ADA. From this point, Netflix realized that they needed to provide captioning. And we knew that this was not going to be an overnight solution. We came with we came up with an agreement that we would have all things were captioned at a certain date. Following this, we were able to go after Hulu, Google Play as well. Google Play has their own movies. We also went for Amazon Prime. All the streaming platforms are now, anybody who provides streaming videos is now required to provide captioning. So we had the agreement that we needed to provide captioning, but we did make concessions on what did or did not. But we said it was about 2013, 2014 was when we had to have everything, or we had to have all of the captions. And I'm very grateful for this, because what would have happened during COVID if we had not had access to streaming platforms with captions? Oh, it would have been awful. We also, NAD has sued large universities such as Harvard and MIT because they did not provide captioning on any of their online videos, which meant that students and anybody who wanted to watch any available content had no access. So we contacted MIT and Harvard and said, please provide captioning. And they said no. And so we went through the process of suing, and they now provide captions because we won. We also have sued legislatures in Oklahoma as well as Florida to provide captioning for the legislative process and hearings. The deaf communities were left out, and both have agreed now to provide captioning for their legislative hearings. And it might sound like our work is done, but it is not. We need to continue advocacy for education, for employment. The employment is not adequate for the deaf community. We also must dismantle racism and sexism and anti-religion, anti-LGBTQIA. We must dismantle all of this. It's not, deaf people, the deaf community is not monolithic. You have people who identify as different intersections, Black, Brown, Indigenous, and we must recognize that their experience of oppression is not just that of a deaf person, but as well as their other identities. We also must work to gaining equity in healthcare and mental health. Prisons are terrible for the deaf community. Technology, telecommunications access has improved some, but we still are left behind as we look into the future. Law enforcement, when law enforcement tends to meet a deaf person, there typically it's not successful, especially if that person is BIPOC. It's possible for this person to be killed because of simple communications. So we need training for police, fire department, and ambulances. We must improve the services provided to senior citizens. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So one of the last comments that I will say is that NAD does serve all states and association, including Texas Association for the Deaf. And with that, I will turn it over to my co-presenter. Mike, are you around? Oh, there he is. Great. Hello, thank you, Howard. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. My name is Mike Swoboda. I am the president of Texas Association for the Deaf. And I wanted to introduce a very important person by the name of Norma Castillo, who is the first Latina female president. If you could please turn on your video. Great, thank you for that. I just wanted to, I'll make this short and sweet. TAD provides services for all counties across our large state, our very vast state. And we are here to protect and provide for the Texans who are deaf and hard of hearing. We do that through outreach. Part of my job is community development and collaboration. I am also very excited to have Dr. Beth Hamilton, who is a very important person as well. She'll be taking over for me shortly. We have 66 people on the board right now. And our terms are for 1 or 2 years, but at this point, I will turn it on over to Norma. Great, thank you so much. This is Norma. Or Beth Hamilton, if you would like to come on. Sure, hello everyone. Hi, my name is Dr. Beth Hamilton. I am a legislative coordinator and liaison for NAD for, I think it's been since 2014. My job is to empower not just the deaf community, but as well as to provide advocacy, to empower the deaf community to advocate for themselves. So I do work with CAD, and we work through a variety of strategies to provide this advocacy. We focus on education. House Bill 2255 is currently something that we are providing new screening. This bill has passed, and we've recognized that there are some gaps when it comes to the system. So we need to make sure that Texas early childhood intervention, early hearing intervention, is able to provide services on a statewide basis. So we have an outreach program through Texas School for the Deaf, and we also provide early childhood intervention, ECI, through Health and Human Services. We have recognized that there are gaps in positions. Go ahead and switch interpreters.
And positions of who would be able to advocate for newborn infants that are identified in order to enhance the system to feed that in and make sure that statewide at TSD has a seat at the table and that they're able to genuinely contribute, because there are no deaf experts or specialists at the state level. And we feel that that's a disservice that needs to be recognized and fixed, that part of HB 255 or 2255. So that's one thing. The other thing is House Bill 548. I think this is like one of the biggest concerns for people, one of the most complicated bills that has to be pursued and modified. It's was passed in 2019, and a lot of deaf people felt a great deal of pride for this bill. Personally speaking, I did as well. It was passed, however, we did spot some issues with some of the data and the information, with TEA's perspective and TSD's perspective, and then ECI, their perspective. We realized that there were different frames of what the bill was really intended for. And so that needed to be changed a bit. And then we had to go back and make some modifications to some of the pieces of the bill. So TEA got involved and realized that some of the data was very important, that there needed to be more accountability. And that was a good thing to see. We also wanted to make sure that TSD had a bigger voice at the table and that they were able to deliver what was missing all over the state of Texas, because they were in control of the outreach, and they obviously deserve a place and a voice at the table to be able to contribute to those tweaks with HB, the House bill's language. And so we felt that we needed to develop and set up something for all deaf and hard of hearing people to have a foundation with their language by the time they get to kindergarten in their reading and writing. We feel by third grade they should already have those skills, but we recognize that they didn't, and HB 548 would help to address some of those issues. But it's slow progress to change that bill, because as you know, changing a bill at the legislative level is never easy. And then part two of that is with some of those modifications, then we also, TAD for a long time has wanted to set up a interpreter certification, educational certification. And we felt that that was very important, because the quality of interpreting services greatly impacts deaf people, their ability to interact in the world and to develop and to truly function on an equivalent level with their hearing peers. And that was this very serious issue that TAD wanted to tackle. So we have been in pursuit of that, of the educational certification requirement for interpreters. If it was in a rural area where it was more difficult to provide interpreters, we would understand situations like that. But then what would be some other strategies to be able to address the level of the interpreters being provided to children in those areas? The next thing was communication access. Howard has already mentioned this in his part about providing interpreters. We do have governors who provide some interpreters for their press briefings, but then many others who don't. Like, for example, during the Uvalde shooting, there was no interpreter present at those briefings, no access at all. So that's another problem that we need to address. We need to set up a standard so that all interpreters at the local level, all places, the local level, the state level, always provide an interpreting service, and that those announcements and briefings are accessible. Also, we recognize that there are a great deal of senior citizens in the state of Texas, nursing homes, that experience a lot of frustrations with not having appropriate interpreting services, or the shift to VRI at the senior citizens in the nursing home. A lot of the provision of VRI with interpreting services, but that's difficult for them. For those that maybe can't sign at the moment, or are in hospice care, or are in these very delicate situations. So that's the gist of what we need to pursue in that bill in order to make some of the tweaks to the language. These bits of action that we can take for the communities, such an example with the Nike company that wouldn't provide any interpreters for deaf people that were going to their camps. We worked with them, and then COVID happened right in the middle of those negotiations. And then later we were working with them more to provide interpreters. And then finally, recently, they made the decision to finally provide interpreters, even though it was something they should have done, that millions of companies should be doing. But there was a lack of that awareness at the corporate level. So we've had opportunities to partner with the deaf community to support these initiatives, such as with the Nike company, to provide interpreting services for all of their sporting camps: football, volleyball, lacrosse, soccer, any of the sports that they're offering nationwide. And now I think it was like, 50 kids that were going to different camps across the country for Nike. And so NAD, my role, or TAD, my role is as a consultant about educating on accessibility and using my skills to work as a liaison with the legislatures across the states to provide these services for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And I know that our time is running out, but if you have any questions or need some clarifications, please let me know. Howard, I think we have some questions for you. Would you like to answer some of those? Yes, I would. Would you like to sign the question, Randy, and then I can answer them? Yes, that's a great idea. I appreciate NAD's effort to work with the legislatures on the laws and the bills that affect these services, both with ASL on television, conferences, press briefings. If the law is passed for working with ASL interpreters at these press conferences, should we maybe include a QR code that is scannable for deaf people at the beginning of these sessions in order to access an interpreter? Yeah, that's actually been offered as a potential way for deaf people to know where to find ASL online. We can encourage that. One issue with that is that some people don't have reliable internet connectivity at home. Maybe they have it on their phone, but that's a little bit difficult to access, perhaps, to see. So for those people, we could still, I mean, it would still be nice to have that icon, that QR code ready to connect those that are able to do it, to have it in a place where it's known. Another thing that we need to do, though, is to also have links for governors, for the president, for any local mayors or officials, so that when they see, when someone logs on, they know that it's always, the icon's always in the same place and that they know where to find it. And that actually reminds me of the Super Bowl, when there was a lot of complaints from people who didn't have good internet access. And thankfully to the NFL, because for many years, there was a lot of negotiation, a lot of relationship building with how to just get caption access. And many of you may remember that years ago, maybe 15 or so years ago, the game by law had to be captioned, but they had such good commercials that the Super Bowl is famous for that most people don't even tune in to watch the game anymore. They tune in to see the commercials. And at that time, there were almost no captions on the commercials. So some people that I knew would have like links for online, for they knew that people who were working in the NFL could link them to. And they were like, you guys are spending millions and millions of dollars to get airtime for these great commercials. And you're making these commercials, which is costing you over $3 million just to get one commercial spot during Super Bowl time with no captions. It only costs, what, $300 for captions. So there was a lot of debate around that. And they finally, on the national level, the Super Bowl got in touch with all of their people that were buying commercial space and requiring captioning. Or then you'd have someone, a hearing interpreter, providing sign language for the Super Bowl. And they were like, well, there shouldn't be a hearing person. But they said it doesn't matter. As long as the person's skilled, you have someone that's there for deaf people. So then they partnered with NAD. And NAD selected deaf talent, those who were actually performance signers for the music. I think that was a process of 12 years. And then at that time, they had asked, or we asked, what about the halftime show? Why is nothing being provided for the halftime show? And they balked at that idea for a little bit. But then finally, last year, we got, for Wawa and Sean Forbes, they were able to be there. But there's always been the issue, not with the NFL. The NFL has acceded to all of our demands and our requests, but with the networks, that's where the Super Bowl is shown on every year. They were not the same ones. It's not NBC every year, for example. It would switch around to CBS, ABC, Fox, whoever would have the rights to the Super Bowl that year. And so every year we'd have to jump, okay, who's next? Who do we have to try to convince next for these services to keep ASL accessible on the screen the whole time? And like I said, people were just so hesitant to the idea. And there was no law in place, so there was therefore no way to sue them. They would have to go above and beyond what the requirement was. So finally they had the online streaming, which was maybe a little bit of a step in the better direction. And we went to the NFL and they said, no, it's not on us, you got to go to the network. So those that were accessing NBC online, though, then had to have a subscription. So then we got a hold of NBC and all the networks to say, well, no one can access you if they don't have a subscription. So some were willing to work with that and some weren't. But it's always been a bit of a mess with these networks and slow progress. And then once a law is passed, it would eliminate the problem. But we're still working on that. So for the Super Bowl, we have plans coming up in the next year to work on that better, that link, that code. But hopefully that can be a nice solution to that issue. Thank you. Beth, yes, I have a question for you. You've mentioned the 988 number for mental health emergencies. Have we thought about maybe using communication services for the deaf who has ASL Direct now as a way to have deaf representatives answer those calls to work with those people? Have we considered that? Howard's saying yes and no. We have spoken with the FCC, and the FCC said that there is no ASL Direct feature available, which is not true. CSD does have an ASL Direct service that they provide for like most hotlines. Yeah. But for like the suicide line, there would have to be a special training, obviously, with therapists. I don't think CSD has that at the ready, but there is one group that typically does provide ASL resources for emergency services for any sort of therapy or traumatic event. So we've told the FCC about that group that does have the capability and the resources, and the FCC hasn't been 100% on board with that. They would have to give the funding to it because it would require a large hiring drive to have someone available 24/7 to be able to respond to those needs and have the skilled therapists. So the FCC has delayed action on that, and we've been after them fervently trying to pass something to establish something like that, an ASL 988. And this is Randy here speaking. Beth, would you be able to talk a little bit about what work TAD has planned or has in the works for this next legislative session that will be starting in January? we'd like to hear what you all have been working on specifically.
Sure. Are you talking about what we're working on now? Yes. So we are working on applying on promoting some bills that I failed to mention earlier. The sign support. I'm sorry, I forgot what the P means. SSP bill. It's provider. This is Howard provider. Right. Sign support provider. Right. So this is one bill that we are working on. We also that we have applied for. We also are looking to have all interpreters to make sure that we have access to interpreters and that all TV and internet sites are accessible for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. Another initiative that we are focused on is those two are new bills. And then also we have House Bill 2255 and House Bill 548, which is again to address other issues that we have. We also have other bills that we have proposed that are not funded yet. But we have some that have almost passed when it comes to funding, et cetera. Honestly, we don't know. We never know who's going to be opposed to what. So we are also working with members, and we're meeting with constituents and to set up meetings to discuss these 4 top priorities that we have. This is what we're in the process of right now. And also we need to look at some other possible bills relating to deaf services and things that would be nice. You know, we've been working closely with the legislature and our lobbyists who have been doing an outstanding job of working with the bills. Sometimes bills are proposed and it doesn't go through TSD yet. So we have people at TSD who are able to get eyes on the bills and ask for clarification on what something might specifically mean and what it means for the community. And it sometimes means we have to go back and double check and see things from different perspectives and see how it will affect people of different ages. And then occasionally we'll see that there's something that won't work and we end up having to kill a bill, which ends up getting sad. And that does present some problems, or there's a bill that we can't kill. And then sometimes we are able to kill it, which is great. And we do provide a lot of feedback and a lot of collaboration. I think maybe for the last 8 years, we've been doing some pretty hefty relationship building in place with the governor's office on people's disabilities, in order to provide a voice for these communities. There's a lot more information on the website that you can go and look. I encourage you to look online. And if there's something that you feel like is not accessible, please let us know. We're trying to make everything accessible for everybody. Yes, this is Howard, and we need support. We are trying to get in touch with legislatures, and we're brainstorming ideas and all you name it. We just developed one for the improvement of the future care for the deaf, for deaf children, and we'll be rolling out information from that initiative soon. This is Beth. It's very important for people of Texas to understand that Texas is huge, and deaf people will benefit from this conversation. You know, it takes 3 agencies in order to pass a bill, and it takes years. For Texas, it takes 3 tries for a bill to pass. And if we don't pass in 3 tries, then the bill gets killed. So if we try once and twice and it doesn't work, we have a 3rd time, and that's it. After the 3rd time, it gets killed. So we're currently on the fence with that one with 548 and with House Bill 548. But we have to continue to collaborate with TAD, TSD as well in order to get these bills passed. We can't do this without everyone's involvement. This is Randy. Okay, I'm going to see if we have any more questions in the Q&A box. And I'm assuming if not, then we are done with that. I would like to thank Howard, Beth, the TSD board, the NAD board, the TAD board, the captioners, the interpreters, and everybody for being a part of this meeting. Thank you so much for being able to share your vast knowledge about the myriad of situations. Howard, thank you for your involvement and for your striving to improve everybody's experience. It is nice that it's not just a minimum met requirement, that you are striving for people to go above and beyond, especially with things like the Super Bowl. We really appreciate your work. This is Howard. Randy, thank you very much for your committee for allowing us to elevate and uplift the deaf community of Texas. Also, Texas Association for the Deaf, Mike, Beth, Norma, who is the president? Yes, Norma Castillo. Thank you so much for reminding me. I thank you all three for being here. We wouldn't be able to do this for Texas without your collaboration. And this is Beth. For those who are watching, thank you for really taking the time to initiate that, or to see that we have many issues that are impacting the deaf community. We network we provide a lot of outreach to people, and with your help, we're hoping that with your help, we'll be able to reach more people. So thank you so much for your time. And this is Randy. One last thing I would like to mention as a reminder, our committee meetings will be August 4th and 5th. Our next committee meeting will be August 4th and 5th, and we convene every 3 months. And we always welcome public comment. You're free to join us. We will have interpreters available. We have captioning available. If there is an issue or a situation that you are interested in that you would like for us to address as a committee, please come to our committee meeting. Public comment is normally in the morning during the day, so please come and take the opportunity to present. Please, if you do, open your video so we can see you. If you would prefer to write it or sign it, that's fine. We'll provide access to everything. On our website, you'll find all the information in addition to a chat link. There'll be a link to register for the committee for our meeting, quarterly meeting. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. Thank you. This is Howard. Goodbye. This is Beth. Goodbye. Thank you so much.